light's really kicking. See if I can angle out of here. The light coming from that. There's nothing we can do about it. Whoa. All right, guys, anybody out there? If so, what do you want to talk about? Do 7:30 a.m. We have our third exam on third exam Wednesday, and just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, nobody has any immediate questions, or if you do, that's what we're here. Do. Ready? Yeah, so to help it in, I'm gonna first of all, thank you for your question, Mary Claire. I'm gonna answer it in two different ways. I'm gonna give it a simple answer, and then I'll do the more detailed answer for maybe some of you who are super curious, okay? So, here is my hand, this hand, my right, is going to represent the scapula, okay? So don't worry about my forearm, just think about this, and this represents the spine of the scapula. And then this is going to represent the humerus, or the shoulder joint, right? So remember the glenohumeral joint now, underneath that spine of the scapula is that glenoid fossa, the socket of the shoulder joint. But here's the spine because I want to show you kind of how this works. So in essence, the scapula is kind of limited in what it can do in terms of contribution. So when the scapula elevates, it doesn't literally translate you up and down like an elevator. It has a rotation that actually kind of takes place here at the sternoclavicular joint, okay? But in elevation, the shoulder stays globally in the same place, but actually what happens is the shoulder adducts as the scapula goes up. So you kind of get this illusionary effect of it just going up and down. Okay. Now, that scapula elevation, elevation, depression, elevation, depression, elevation, depression, because the scapula not only goes up, not only kind of tilts up, but it translates up. Okay. Now, upward rotation is excessive when it can go even further, because if your shoulder stays, it won't go as high as you could. If your shoulder goes up, it can go even further. That makes sense. So the easiest way I explain it is that you look at the glenohumeral joint, you look at the shoulder, and when the arms go up, whether it's flexion, abduction, combination, the scapula is going to reposition itself so that the ball stays on the golf tee. So if this is the glenoid fossa and you have the glenohumeral joint moving, when you get your hands up, the scapula is going to upwardly rotate so that you maintain the glenohumeral joint. So the easiest way to look at this is when my arms go up in the air, the scapula is going to upwardly rotate. Now, can I have upward rotation separate from elevation and depression? Yeah, but a lot of that is the illusionary effect with the humerus. In other words, when my humerus doesn't move with it, I'm just looking at elevation and depression, elevation and depression. When my humerus moves, upward rotation to reposition the socket as you go up, okay? So elevation, depression, elevation, depression, elevation, depression. In the lectures, I emphasize how layman terms, people get that confused a lot because in the gym, I'm going to have to reposition myself. That sounds right, my friend. People in the gym talk about shoulder shrugs and shoulder shrugs. And if that was a shoulder shrug, you'd have to dislocate your shoulder and do this. And right, so this is scapular motion. And the shoulder joint is just going along for the ride. In fact, honestly, if anything, if you keep your arms perpendicular to the ground or parallel with gravity, when you do this, you're actually adducting your shoulder because the socket does this. Yeah, you actually adduct. So you can really mess with people. And you could be like, yeah, I need to get in some adduction, and abductions, to do that. In addition, the shoulder is going along for the ride, translatory up and down. You know what else is going along for the ride when you do shrugs? Your elbow. Your elbow is going along for the ride up and down. Your wrist is going along for the ride. So arbitrarily, you could say you're doing elbow shrugs. You could do wrist shrugs. Hey, man, let me get a set of these finger shrugs in here. So elevation, depression, upward rotation, downward rotation. And again, how I'm going to separate those things in class is, I will use a lot, because a lot of times elevation and upward rotation happen together. Because again, upward rotation is just excessive elevation. So what I'll do is on the test, I will match up shoulder stuff with upward and downward rotation. Abduction, upward rotation, abduction, downward rotation, flexion with upward rotation, extension with downward rotation. Or I will clarify. If you're doing a shoulder press, I might say which of the following would contribute to your functional circle. And so I wouldn't put like upward rotation with elevation as separate answers. I'd maybe put them together or just leave out one or the other. But that's the concept, is that the scapula can have general motion, some translation and rotation. And it helps to get your functional circle higher and reposition your hands so that you could work above your head. Mary Claire, can you confirm that that was that I answered your question? Oh, you're very welcome. Hey, good morning, Trey. Good morning to all of you. I look extra red. I look like a Delcom lobster today. I took some niacin this morning, and all my blood vessels are just blowing up. Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question, Annie. So, in its simplest form, looks like it's moving, and it is. The way you get, let's see if I can back this up a little bit. The way you reposition your hand. So again, functional circle of reach. We need to get these little critters in all different kind of possible positions, whether that's to work, grab, fix, defend. We need to be able to be dexterous in this 360-degree bubble of function. And what does not reposition our hand, and it actually kind of makes sense, guys, because you have so many nerves and strings that pull from muscles, you can't rotate your wrist. If your wrist were to rotate, like in its transverse plane, you would twist and knot up and snap all of the vessels that you have that cross up in here. In other words, think about all of this as wiring. God, this is so frustrating. We're going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship, zooming through the sky. Oh, much better. You'll see my liquor collection. Oh, much better. Okay, so again, imagine if you have all these wires here. The last thing you want is your wrist to twist and knot and pinch and snap all of these wires. So, but we also need function. We need to be able to reposition our hand to grab and be dexterous in this window. So how do we accomplish that? We accomplish it by understanding that there are two main bones approximately here that form the wrist joint. You have your radius, which is thumb side. You have your ulna, which is pinky side. When you are in anatomical position or in a supinated position, those two bones line up parallel. They are literally laying side by side. That's what I explain in a lecture. And the radius has, or the radial head, radius rotates when it's free to move, like a clock. It rotates about the ulna. It wraps and unwraps. Now, I don't like, me no likey, people using the term supination like a soup bowl. I don't like it because there's some illusions that can mess with you. The easiest way to understand pronation and supination is the act of being prone or the act of being supine. Supine means facing forward, whether that supine position on the ground, you're looking up. Prone position is looking down, facing down. So in anatomical position, your radius is facing forward. Your radius and your ulna are lined up. They are unwrapped, supine, supinated, unwrapped. So when you go from supine to prone, the act of going facing forward to rotating and face down, that act of pronation. It's a lot cleaner, huh? Than the shoot ball, the shoot ball. The act of going prone, the act of going face down, the act of wrapping. And the analogy I use is that if you have a couple laying in bed, and one person in the relationship could wrap their body about the other, go prone, but yet keep their head on their same pillow. You wrap your body around your significant other, but you keep your head on the same pillow. That's what the radius does. The radius wraps and unwraps of the ulna, but yet the head stays in the same position. The head of the radius stays in the same place, and the body and the feet wrap and unwrap around the ulna. And the reason we do that is so that the feet can reposition itself, but yet all of the strings and the nerves and all that stuff doesn't. This still stays. You know, you're not pinching and twisting all the nerves and all the things that run through the wrist. This still stays here. So some people think this is wrist motion, but it's not. It's radial ulnar joint motion. Look at the movement happening in my forearm. When I move my wrist, I don't see my forearm go anywhere, but when I do this, I see my forearm moving. This is not wrist. This is radial ulnar joint. Radial ulnar joint. A lot of times elbow and radial ulnar joint get confused for each other because they live in the same capsule. They live in the same area. They live in the same apartment complex, but it's two separate rooms. Elbow is humerus and ulna, and radial ulna is radius and ulna, proximally on the head and distally by the feet. But this, even though distally the radius wraps and unwraps around the ulna, that's not wrist. Wrist is radius, ulna, and bones. Wrist does flexion, extension, ulna, and radial deviation. Hello. This is wrist. This is radial ulnar joint. Okay. Also in the lectures, I gave you key clues to look to see if you're wrapped or unwrapped. Pinky side, thumb side, right? So, and also is the thumb lateral? If the thumb is lateral to your humerus, you are supinated, you are unwrapped. Mama kitty. And if your thumb is medial to the humerus, you are wrapped. You are prone. In a pronated position. Unwrapped, wrapped. Unwrapped, wrapped. Thumb is medial, you're wrapped, pronated. Thumb is lateral, you are unwrapped, you're in a supinated position. So those are some clues that I mentioned in the lectures. Annie, did that answer your question? Yay. And just go back and rewatch the lectures. You know, that's a good way too to get those same concepts that I kind of babbled about. Okay, so what plane? So that's local and global concepts, right? So locally, the radial ulnar joint is always going to spin in its transverse plane. Doesn't matter. It's always going to be an its transverse. Even if I flex my wrist, it's going to be an its transverse because in anatomical position, its transverse and the room's transverse are the same. And then I can move it out of the room's transverse. But if we're looking at global reference, I can pronate and supinate in all three of the room's planes. I could be in the room's transverse. I could be in the room's sagittal. I could be in the room's frontal. I could be from my eyes. I could see transverse, I can see sagittal, I can see frontal. So it's all based on perspective. From the radial ulnar joints perspective, it's always going to be in its transverse plane. But it could be in all three, depending on the perspective global or your eyes. Let me know if that made sense. Hey, you're very welcome. Thank you for the question, for the awesome question. I'm dancing in my head. I keep watching the comments in anticipation of what could be coming next. Okay. Trey, you're talking about this question? That one? I'm trying to make it make sense. So was it when I did this? Okay. Thank you for being polite. That's super cool. One of the rules that I taught you guys, commandments, is we analyze motion joint by joint. So students who have not had me in class, they would look at something like this and their brains would just, because there's just a lot of stuff going on, right? But you guys being taught in the intricacies of human movement analysis, you understand that although there's a lot of stuff happening, all of that stuff can be broken down into simple parts. What is just the wrist doing? Don't care about anything else. All the other stuff is distraction. Let's just analyze the wrist. Don't care about anything else. Everything else is distraction. Let's just analyze the elbow. Same thing, radial ulna, same shoulder, and so on and so on. Okay. So let's start distal and work our way up. We could start proximal, work our way down. Doesn't matter. So my wrist, I start here. My wrist, somewhat anatomical. I go here. Now it's not anatomical. Again, if I'm analyzing my wrist, I just want to say, how did the position of my wrist change? Where I went from being kind of straight to not being kind of straight, right? I went from being straight to not being kind of straight, here to there. If you're getting flexion and extension confused, follow the fingers, finger flexion, wrist flexion. So I went from here to there. I had bilateral wrist flexion when I went from here to there. Okay. Now that's kind of phase one, A to B, B to C. Whoa, my wrist is kind of straight again, right? So I had wrist flexion And when I came back up, I had this extension. That makes sense. So I left Lafayette, went west for a little while, and then I turned around and came back home. Bilateral wrist flexion, bilateral wrist extension. Cool. Now let's do elbow. My elbow starts out somewhat straight. Okay. Now it's not straight. I don't care about the wrist. Don't care about the shoulders. Look, my elbow's flexed, if that makes sense, right? So I started out straight. Now I'm not straight anymore. I had bilateral elbow flexion. Now, did I stay flexed? Yeah, look, I'm still flexed. So bilateral elbow flexion, and then I just stayed flexed. Okay. Let's see, radial ulnar joint. Start, what position? Am I wrapped or unwrapped? Well, my thumb is on the medial part. Remember, if I'm lateral, I'm unwrapped. If I'm medial, I'm wrapped. So I start out being pronated. So here I'm pronated. When I end here, let me check out my thumbs. Whoa, my thumb's lateral. So my thumb went from being medial to being lateral. And the only way that can happen is if I unwrap, if I go from a prone position to a supine position. The concept of going supine is supination. The concept of going prone is pronation. So from here to, this is where the radial ulnar joint magic happens, guys, right here. This is when you unlock. See here, for me to have to meet, Brian, here, for me to have bilateral radial ulnar joint supination, I'd have to unconnect and do this. But once I flex and get them looking at each other, then I can simultaneously have radial ulnar joint open, no problem. Okay. Radial ulnar joint supination. I went from here, Superman, to there. Gimme, 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 gimme. That's what happened. Okay. Shoulders, got a little horizontal abduction going here. And then when I do this, a little horizontal adduction going there. Also, I have some external rotation that happens in there. Dang. Okay. So again, the key thing there, Trey, is to learn to analyze motion joint by joint, change in position, point by point. We don't assume. If I'm leaving and then coming back, then I could do it in phases, right? A to B, B to C, here to there to here. I had flexion here, I had extension there. I had, you just chop up your trip, and but the key thing is you take it joint by joint, and don't fall for the distractions because they are there. Trey, let me know if that was sufficient. No, it would be, so from here to there, from here to here, I wouldn't have any rotation. The external rotation is going to occur when you see this. So from here to here, all I had was horizontal abduction. And then when I do this, that's when you have, I'm going to take the interlock out of external rotation. Internal rotation would occur if I want to go back. So like if I do this and then I do this, that's where the internal rotation would be. The horizontal ab and internal rotation. But if I start here, so watch, I'm going to put a pin flag. I'm going to just do one arm just to show you. Okay. So in other words, watch this. I'm just doing one arm, and I'm going to put a pin flag on my bicep, which represents my humerus. Okay. So watch this. External rotation. External rotation. Make sense? You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. Anytime, anytime. And again, what I'm hoping is that if you guys go back through the lectures, you know, one more time before your test, it'll, you know, make more sense. Has this class gotten you guys to watch sports differently, or watch analyze when you're working out or exercising, or watching the World Series or watching football? You pay attention to things. Good. Awesome. And again, guys, it just comes with practice. The more you speak it, the better you're going to become at it. And that's speaking it in your mind, like, okay, I see it's flexed, extended, she's externally rotated, da 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 da, and speaking it with your peers, where you know, you're at the clinic, you're at work, you're at the gym. You know, you just talk it. You could have your phone out, say, hey, check out this clip of what do you think the hips are doing here, the pelvis are doing here. Watch how they're walking, watch how they're running. This looks different. This looks cool. Slow motion stuff is always the best. When you find slow motion videos of people throw in or kick in, or those are always great. And now we have such great technology. You know, you have slow motion apps on your phone. You can download and record stuff and slow it down. Help see things. You want to know something cool? We didn't, to show the limitations of our eyes processing data, we didn't know horses ran with periods of unsupport. What that means is that there's horses are running, galloping. They're flying through the air sometimes. In other words, they're going to have their feet on the ground, and then there's going to be periods where all four limbs are off the ground. We didn't know that until we were able to slow down the speed to be able to see, oh my goodness, man, those horses are flying through the air, because that was happening so fast. And that's how it sounds too when horses run. So sometimes you just got to slow it down to help us see what's happening. All right, any more questions, clarifications? I've been trying to do my best to communicate with you guys what the content's going to be on and what you're going to be responsible for. Topic number 7. I've sent several emails and I made the little short little videos. So hopefully everybody's understanding of the content, you know, what is on and what's not on. All right, okay, you're welcome. Okay, guys, if that's it, we'll wrap it up. And as always, 24-hour office hours if you need clarification on things. Remember, by this stage, it should be clarification, not repeating whole lectures. You got videos, you could repeat a whole lecture, but it's, hey, when you said this, or, you know, like Trey's questions and Annie's questions and Mary's questions, just, you know, can you clarify this? Can you, I think I got it, but can you, this little part right here, and that's where we should be now. The game plan should already be implemented. It should just be fine tuning little things to make sure we're all on the same page about the little intricate details of the game plan. All right, guys, y'all have a good day. Y'all holler if you need, okay? Bye.